What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews, and today we are finally going to review Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Now, before we begin, I want to just kind of give a quick disclaimer, and that is that some people are going to come into this video with this preconceived notion that no matter what I say, I'm going to be so biased and so negative against this movie because of the recast T'Challa movement. Other people are going to come in and think that I'm not hard enough on this movie because it didn't go my way or it didn't go the way of the comics or whatever, right? I've got news for both people, for whoever thinks this way. As a movie critic, it's not my job to judge a movie based on how I'd like the story to go or based on what I wish the studio would have done. That's not how you do film criticism. What I'm actually going to do is review the movie based off of the merits of the film itself. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that that was very, very clear, so that people understand that, like, look, hey, I watched this movie 3 times. Okay, I watched it 3 times. 1, to get the emotional factor out of the way. 2, to really, just analyze the movie as a critic. And 3, just to see if there were some Easter eggs and stuff like that, which I think I did fine, but I'll put that in a later video. Anyway, I wanted to kind of clear that air from the very beginning, so that you understand that I know I have a job to do as a critic, and I am going to give this movie a fair shot. And the following thoughts are based off of my multiple viewings of the film. So with that said, let's do a very, very quick intro and jump into it. Wakanda must defend itself against other nations in the wake of King T'Challa's death. As the country tries to move on, a new foe arises from the depths of the ocean that is more formidable than the Wakandans could ever imagine. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into the good.
The good.
So Ryan Coogler set out to make Black Panther Wakanda Forever a movie about the journey through grief, and I think he succeeded in that endeavor. The movie rips the band-aid right off and tackles the emotional pain that comes with losing a loved one. Through various characters, Coogler managed to extrapolate different stages of mourning. You could tell through the journeys of the characters that it was translating the obviously real-life feelings that the cast and crew had for the late Chadwick Boseman. Thus, a real sense of authenticity could be felt whenever the characters even spoke about T'Challa. Next up, this movie had some spectacular action, and I would say it was pretty exhilarating. Coogler directed some enthralling scenes that remind you that the Dora Milaje have jurisdiction everywhere. Their tenacity and combat skills were on full display, and there was none better than Okoye's fight scene on the bridge. Oh my goodness, that was something. Look, the fight choreography with Atuma was so good that I caught myself wincing because I felt like I was the one getting beat up during the scene. It was definitely something worth watching. Thanks to some great cinematography, the chases and big battle sequences kept the movie from ever feeling stale. Now, from a visual standpoint, the film was really beautiful to see. The costuming by Ruth E. Carter was exceptional again. The VFX for the movie was very crisp and clear and captivating. The city of Talokan, oh my gosh, now that was definitely an enchanting sight to see. Now, while it is true that Black Panther Wakanda Forever does miss the presence of its lead actor in Chadwick Boseman, the acting from the cast brought some really solid moments. Letitia Wright and Dominique Thorne had great on-screen chemistry as Shuri and Riri Williams. I mean, I had a blast seeing them showcase their intellect on screen together. I'm certainly more interested now in seeing the follow-up Ironheart Disney Plus series too. Winston Duke's M'Baku was also hilarious with his occasional funny quips. Then you had Tenoch Huerta, who brought the role of Namor to life. I mean, I loved how this film made Namor an entire problem to be dealt with. He was more than a formidable enemy and challenge for the country of Wakanda. Now, I think Huerta brought like a really good balance of charm and fierceness to the character because it really made him into a complex antagonist. And it was one character that you kind of like, I think I could root for this guy, but maybe not in this movie. But I have got to say, above everything else, the best performance had to come from Angela Bassett. My goodness, Queen Ramonda, Queen Mother. She put this movie on her shoulders and carried it in every scene. For instance, Queen Mother gave a whole lot of Black Mama energy in this unforgettable scene in the throne room when she confronts Okoye. It would be impossible to pull your eyes away from the screen with that powerful, award-worthy performance. All right, so we had some great visuals, some good action, some great acting, and a couple of good themes as well. But hey, now it's time for the bad.
The bad.
I think one of the prevailing issues with Black Panther Wakanda Forever would probably be in the film's writing. There were different areas of the movie that fell a little short, ranging from the themes, the plot, and even character development. The pacing and focus of the film just felt kind of uneven. One minute the movie's focusing on a character's grief, and then the next minute it's trying to set up some other character for their Disney Plus series or whatever. So for me, I was just kind of like iffy about the writing, and honestly, some of the themes even lost some of their potency as well. So let's kind of go with some of the characters. I felt like Shuri could have been fleshed out a whole lot more. More attention should have been given to her character and more screen time. One thing that felt odd was her stage of grief at the beginning of the movie. It's important to note that Letitia Wright's acting is not an issue here. She delivered a very, very good performance given the material she had to work with. Now, you could certainly feel her conviction every time she was getting very emotional in the movie. I just don't think the writing helped connect the dots for her emotions in the beginning of the film. So let me give you an example. In the third act, in the final act of the movie, Shuri's grief is very, very clear given what she endures, and you see how her emotions are directly tied to that situation. You'll know it when it happens. So it's clear why and how she feels the way she does. The first act of the film, however, just has her stating her anger and who she's mad at. Now, the problem here is kind of like, why are you mad and why are you mad at them? And this is kind of why I'm like, I kind of wish the movie had taken a little bit more time to flesh that out, because what ends up happening is through the editing of the film and possibly the writing, the movie's basically asking you to just make blanket assumptions about Shuri's character and just run with it. If she says she's mad, she's just mad. If she tells you, she wants to do this, you just be like, okay, I guess that's just how she feels. Now, another character that I think suffered from the writing was Winston Duke's M'Baku. As I mentioned before, he had some really funny moments in the film, but that was about it. Despite a few funny remarks, it was a bit disappointing to see so little from his character. It was further discouraging to see his character reduced to being just a punching bag to establish other characters' strengths. The sad thing about this is that it was completely unnecessary. The film demonstrated in other instances that it could show how strong characters were without being at the expense of another character. Now, while I will say that the majority of the themes that were explored in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, they did land, but some of them felt kind of recycled. It was great, for example, to see the Mayan culture versus African or Black culture dynamic. However, this clash of cultures with colonizers at the epicenter is something we already explored in the last Black Panther. Sure, there are slight differences, but at times, Namor came off as just a Mexican version of Killmonger. The only difference was he played far more into the anti-hero role rather than a full-on villain. Then there's the familiar theme of vengeance consuming a person, which was already played out with T'Challa in Captain America Civil War. I don't know. It just kind of felt like a missed opportunity to make the themes that happen in Black Panther Wakanda Forever feel a whole lot more unique and distinct. Now, moving on, there was still some issues with the writing that they were kind of cringeworthy for me. For one, I was not a fan of the constant use of death as a plot device to motivate characters. The last Black Panther film had T'Chaka die to motivate T'Challa. By the way, kind of sad how we never got a funeral for T'Chaka. We just kind of glossed over that because, hey, it was about T'Challa. Want to know how that was a plot device? Have you seen the funeral for T'Chaka? I didn't. That's what I'm talking about when I say these deaths were just meant there just for the sake of the character. Let me continue and give you some more. You also had Njobu, who was killed in the beginning of Black Panther, to motivate Killmonger later on. And in this movie, this cycle of death just continues. I mean, T'Challa himself has already died 2.5 times. He almost died in Black Panther and then in Infinity War and now in Wakanda Forever. And I have to say, I'm sorry, but look, it's kind of excessive, especially as a Black man, to keep seeing these things perpetuated on screen with these heroes that you're supposed to love and really gravitate to. In addition to that, you also have the factor of using real life tragedy and putting it into the fictional story. While it is certainly elevated the genuineness of the performances from the cast, who by the way are still grieving, it was disconcerting to have so much of what happened to Chadwick be mirrored in this movie. There were certain lines in the film that were just a little too on the nose with his passing, and it was hard to focus on the actual fictional story. Lastly, I kind of feel as though Wakanda was, cheapened a little bit and downgraded only for the sake of certain writing decisions in the story. All the awe and wonder of a technically advanced country that could save a person from a fatal bullet wound seemed to fade away once they met a mysterious challenge. Now, their limitation only felt like a means to an end to push characters forward rather than being a legit issue, let's just say, beyond the country's capabilities. So, in another situation, when Wakanda engages in battle, it was great to see their strategic plan of war. However, their strategy seemed dumbed down just for the sake of giving their opponent the upper hand in the story. So, in other words, instead of creating a more believable situation where one side could outwit or outpower the other, the writing dictated that Wakanda do something that, in my opinion, made little to no sense just for the sake of building up the tension in the final scene. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on to the reason.
The reason.
Black Panther Wakanda Forever is an emotionally gripping film that makes the best of what it can given the tragic hand that it was dealt. It's full of action and fantastic performances, but the story and themes can feel unbalanced at times. The film takes a big risk by injecting real-life trauma into this fictional storytelling. This isn't like when we lose a beloved character like Tony Stark who dies in Endgame, because in real life, Robert Downey Jr. is alive and well. The death and mourning in this film just hits differently. Black Panther Wakanda Forever does its best to try and pay tribute to Chadwick Boseman. I think this film offers something different to different people, depending on where you're coming from with this, right? If you've experienced grief of losing a loved one, then there's a lot here to connect with. People can also appreciate the exceptional portrayal and performances of the Black women in this movie that carry the whole film, honestly. Depending on your attachment to the character of T'Challa and the actor Chadwick Boseman, this movie could be a mixed bag of emotions for you too. So, when it comes to the rating for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I've got to give it a 7 out of 10. Now, I cannot say that Black Panther Wakanda Forever is better than the last movie. Let's just say the first movie accomplished a completely different energy, a different vibe, and a different sense of upliftment. This film has a different goal in mind. It's trying to do something very different here. I think it is kind of similar to the movie Logan, with Hugh Jackman. The story was an end of a character's arc, right? And Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the end of Phase 4. It's the end of that arc. Both films, regardless of how good they may be, didn't push me personally to the point of wanting to do repeat viewings. It's kind of like once you get what you get, that's it. Like, I understand. I get it, right? And Wakanda Forever, I think, is far more emotionally draining. And even with that said, I do still think it's worth the watch. Finally, there is a mid-credit scene that you will want to see. To that, I'll simply say that I certainly hope Marvel invests a lot into what they showed. There's a lot of legwork that needs to be done, and hopefully what was set up is not just some symbolic gesture that can be shoved off to the side in the future. But we will have to wait and see how that all plays out. Anyway, that is my thought and review for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I will be coming out with a much more detailed spoiler review. I don't know if I'm going to do that as a standalone, if I'm going to do a chat, or maybe we do a roundtable. I don't know. But you definitely want to stay tuned for that. If you haven't already, make sure that you also check out my interview with Nate Moore. I'm going to have to break those up in two parts because one is non-spoiler and the other one is spoiler. And as soon as I can drop the spoiler one, trust me, I will. Anyway, if you have seen Black Panther Wakanda Forever, let me know what you thought about the movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. And when you do see it, come on back to this video and let me know what you thought about it. Anyway, I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you're new here and you like what you see, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell so you don't miss out the next time I drop a video. I've got more videos and reviews to do for you all, and until next time, I'll see you all later.